Welcome back, everybody. How are we doing this morning? It is Tuesday morning. It is bright and sunny outside. I am looking forward to Champions League this afternoon. Middlesbrough play this afternoon for anybody who's on Hayden Hackney watch. But more importantly, we've got a lot to discuss today. Welcome back to the channel. This is United versus Everybody. I am your host, Sean. You all are the UVE community, and I couldn't be more thankful and appreciative and proud of just everything you guys do to help this channel grow and be what it is. So big up yourselves. But got a lot to discuss today because we got big news yesterday that we haven't even touched upon yet because I had a lot going on. Big news this morning as well. It's just all sorts of big news. Obviously, Sir Jim sat down with Gary Neville and I think with BBC Sport as well to discuss all sorts of stuff. So I don't know if you've seen those interviews, but they are out there if you guys want to go watch them for yourselves. Loads of stuff was discussed. Loads of information was shared in those interviews. Some good, some bad. Some of it we already knew. Some of it was new information and has contradicted a lot of what we thought we knew based on what the media has put out. Surprise, surprise. But we're going to recap some of the major talking points from that Gary Neville interview with Sir Jim and whatnot. We're going to discuss them together today as community. And then obviously we're going to start with the big news this morning. Coming straight from the club, the big official announcement about a 100,000 seat stadium. We got some images and things from the architect, Lord Norman Foster, as well. So we're going to take a look at some of that, get an idea of what we can expect. Obviously, that's not going to be here immediately, but we're going to dive into all that today. So like the video before we get started, please, if you could, subscribe to the channel. It does help the community grow. We are on the road to 3K. And then go check out the memberships if you guys want to get more involved in the channel, the topics we discuss, scouting reports, and then there's even ways you guys can jump on virtually and get involved in match reactions, match previews, all that stuff as well. Love to get you guys more involved. So let's start with the stadium news, shall we? So United put out a short video this morning announcing a 100K seat stadium. I don't know if you've seen the mock-ups. We're going to look at them right now. The design was apparently inspired by the Trident. So let me throw this up here on the screen for y'all. So as you can see, it's not all on the same kind of side. It's kind of it makes a triangle when you look at it from above. We'll see some more videos too, but apparently these spires are about 200 meters high and will be visible from about 40 kilometers away. I think it sort of looks like a circus tent. I've seen a lot of people putting that out there, but I mean, it's fitting, right? Considering the circus that we are. So that is what some of the exterior could look like. Big up Lionheart's, good to see you. Well, this should be an interesting stream today. Well, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm more interested in what your guys' opinions are. But right now we're jumping in with the stadium news first, get some of the smoother stuff out of the way, and then we're going to dive in. Big up Dark Crow, man. How are you doing? Hopefully you're doing well. Good to see you this morning. So that's one image there of the outside. So it's interesting. So then there's also a mock-up of the interior as well, which features like that wraparound screen that we saw in the SoFi Stadium when that all was getting discussed. Remember a couple months ago we talked about SoFi being an inspiration, and they had that wraparound screen. The Bernabeu has one as well, I think, but if you remember. So this is another image of the exterior. So that's, again, you can see the spires are sort of set apart, but when you look at it from a certain angle, it is supposed to be inspired by that trident. But you can see the wharf there, Salford Quays, everything right there, a couple little apartment buildings, things like that. So that, I mean, it looks pretty nice. The red is cool. The netting around it is kind of interesting to me. I don't know if I am a big fan of the netting around it. It makes it look like something. It looks like you're watching like Deadliest Catch and somebody like pulled a fishing net in from the river or whatever. But maybe that's supposed to be part of it. I don't know. But so this is what it could look like from the interior as you are looking at it from. You can see the spire there. You can see that from a certain angle. Obviously, that's going to be difficult for fans to see. And this is kind of like pitch side. This is opposite end. As you can see, the Players Tunnel mock-up over there. But you can kind of see the wraparound screen where it says theater up there. That is kind of the screen that's going to be wrapped around a little bit. So interesting stuff there. Let me know what you guys think about that. The plan is also to host like concerts and whatnot, along with, hopefully potentially World Cup matches and even maybe a Champions League final one day. I can guarantee you, if we get a 100K seat stadium like this, it will host a Champions League final one day. It's going to happen. It's just the way it is. We had they did their International Champions Cup here probably about 10 years ago at University of Michigan Stadium, and that's like 117,000 seat capacity. One of the biggest stadiums in the country, and it was packed for the preseason, man. So aside from the pitch and the stands, it looks like the plan is also to incorporate a full public space where people can eat, they can shop, they can chill. It kind of looks like a mall. And Lord Norman Foster said it's going to be the largest public space in the world. He called it a mixed-use mini city when he's the architect behind it. So this is walking up to the exterior. You can see that kind of netting roof mock-up. Obviously, it's not like a net, but that's the way it's supposed to look like. But again, it looks like a circus, honestly. But it is what it is. This is a mock-up of what it could look like exterior-wise. As you can see, a lot of tiers, a lot of balconies, a lot of different. Obviously, it's probably not going to look 100% accurate, but you can see it kind of looks like a big shopping mall, which I don't mind. It's pretty interesting though. But again, another mock-up of what it could look like when there are events going on here. Pretty sweet looking. This is a mock-up of the interior, so you can see another kind of image of the close-up of the interior of the roof and things. Obviously, the Megastore mock-up down there, a couple of tiers there as well. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Went ahead a little too much. But interesting stuff, right? So again, Lord Norman Foster, the architect who designed the stadium, he was also going on, as he was discussing it on the United website, if you see that little clip, describing some of the features of the stadium as well. And those, aside from just the restaurants and like the wraparound screen, whatever, he said the stadium itself, specifically the roof, is functional in other ways, economically, green space. So like the roof, for instance, he said it harvests and utilizes solar energy and even utilizes rainwater as well, which is pretty cool. And he says he aims for the design to bring fans close to the pitch. The target here is to build in 5 years. Now, he said normally this takes about 10 years to do something of this magnitude and this scope. But he said they were able to cut it down by utilizing the existing infrastructure. He said it was like, I forget what the word he was that used, basically utilizing the shipping canals that are already there in terms of the logistics, and utilizing those to bring in basically all the components, all the pieces, because literally Manchester is right by the canal. So it's very, very easy to do that. But again, it sounds like it's going to be a 5-year process. Says 2030 is the initial target, no later than 2032. Obviously, we know that stadiums do tend to go a little bit longer. It can go a little bit more expensive, as we saw from Spurs Stadium. It was like 8 times what they initially thought. So if you haven't got to Old Trafford yet, there's time. You're going to have another couple of years, but we'll still be utilizing it while this is going on. He also says that in order to bring more fans to the stadium and increase the logistics and everything, they're going to rebuild Old Trafford Station. So again, one of the difficulties of rebuilding the stadium, because the only area that you can actually add more seating to is the south stand. And the south stand, there's the railway is behind it, which is what makes it difficult, because there's railroads. Now the railway has been shut down since I think 2018. I think the club kind of stopped utilizing it because of just health and safety concerns, because it is a little old. But the plan is to rebuild that area in order to utilize the trains to bring people to and from the stadium, to just more foot traffic. So we don't have to worry about only using Ubers and the trams. The trams are a nightmare already on Maps Day. This is why when I go, I stay as close to the stadium as I can, because I'm not dealing with any of that. But could be interesting to see how all that looks. So let me see what you guys are saying here. Darko says it's a competition with Dubai for tourists. I mean, only rich folks go to Dubai. I've never been to Dubai. It looks hot. I don't like the heat. Pop open a cold one this morning. Pineapple juice, y'all. I love it. Leonard says, do we know what the big disc is going to? Those things on the spires? I imagine, I didn't see anything specific laid out, but maybe it's like the Space Needle. Maybe it's something that there's an elevator or something that goes up to, or maybe it's just there for, I don't know, satellite purposes. I really couldn't tell you. I haven't heard anything from it. But Danny, big up, man. Good to see you this morning. You're just wrapping up the the stadium stuff. So get your thoughts in on the stadium. We did shared a couple images from that. Hit that like button. Yes, do hit that like button, you guys. It does help the channel. Does help the videos get out there and get more people in the community. I love getting everyone's opinion. Leonard says, I don't want to think about the prices for just a coffee in the mini city. I'm sure if they do it properly to where they rent space to places, then United aren't going to care about the price of how much the coffee is. They're just going to care about the lease, to the price of the leasing the space, which I think what they should do. I mean, they should put in a Wagamama, a Nando's, a Starbucks, whatever. I know some people aren't Starbucks. I don't really like Costa. I've tried it a couple times, and I'm not a big fan of the Costa, but Nando's I've got time for. Wagamama I've always got time for. Those pork belly bao wraps are amazing. But I think that's how they can make money with a lot of that space in there, is just leasing it to people. You're making the space make work for you, basically. So I think, yeah, they've got the Melita coffee upstairs in the Red Cafe. If you ever go to Old Trafford, it's pretty expensive and it's pretty small. So it's a complete ripoff if you get anything at the stadium. The only thing you can get at the stadium right now is the Red Cafe. So it is what it is. I don't go to hotel football to eat dinner. It's very overpriced. And it's not that it's bad. It's just what you get is the same as you get at another place, but it's just more expensive. So don't bother if you're going to go to hotel football, just go a couple hours before kickoff, go up to the roof and just hang out. Costs you £1. It goes to charity. Just go up there and do that. Danny says it looks cheap and tacky. I was waiting for somebody. I think it looks like a circus tent, but as far as the plans for the interior, utilizing the space, making it like a hub instead of having people only come for matches, making it a place where people can chill, spend more money. Obviously, you need to. If they put in like a hotel and stuff in there too, that's how we're going to get out of this shit show right now financially. And I don't have a problem with that personally, but it's just where we are right now. We could have avoided this. We could have just redone Old Trafford, had the Glazers at any point in time open their wallets and consulted with some engineers and been a little more proactive and not so neglectful, but this is where we are. So Teresa, welcome. Hi, everyone. I personally think it's fabulously innovative. I like it. We'll see. It's all well and good to put it out there in the concepts and the art and everything, but the proof is in the pudding. So we're going to see what happens, but I don't have a problem with it. I like what I see. Because it is a little, aside from the mega store and like the museum and the cafe, that's really the only thing there is to do at Old Trafford. And then if you're at Old Trafford, then you're taking a tram either downtown or you're going over to like Media City. And that's pretty much all there is. So with this in mind, there will be more going on. And you could still go do all those other things. Media City is right there. Media City is pretty cool. Downtown obviously has got a lot going on. The National Football Museum, there's a classic football shirts storefront downtown as well, if anyone's into old kits. Piccadilly's down there. When in the nicer weather, Piccadilly Gardens is open. There's a lot of food vendors and stuff. I know Piccadilly gets a bad rap. I enjoy downtown Manchester a lot. It's fun to just kind of walk around. There's like a Chinatown down there. It's pretty cool. Rob, good afternoon, or good morning, Rob. Afternoon for you, morning for me still. Rob says, don't mind the stadium. Looks like a stadium in an indoor arena one. Yeah, the plan is to use it for concerts and stuff as well, hosting World Cup matches, maybe a Champions League final. Like I said, if it gets 100K stadium and it looks anywhere like this at all, it'll host World Cups and Champions League finals for sure. So Rob says, not seen all the Neville interview, but saw the BBC one. Jim seemed very open with his answers. Yeah, he did, and that's where we're heading now with this conversation. I was impressed with how open Sir Jim was. I was impressed with Gary Neville for how direct he was with a lot of his questions, how brazen Gary Neville is. I mean, we know this is from Gary Neville for a while, but how just open he is with his criticism of the Glazers, constantly making sure. And we all know it. It's just refreshing to see people actually say it in this front and center like this, because a lot of the media won't do that. And as we're going to explore, a lot of what the media has shared and put out there might not be accurate. Surprise, surprise, like I said. But again, it's interesting. So there were a couple things that didn't sit right with me with some of Sir Jim's responses and some of the ways he avoided answering some things directly. But we're going to dive into that now. So that's where we're going. Good segue, Rob. Again, hit that like button before we dive right in, because it's going to be pretty long-winded. Let me get another swig of my pineapple juice. Mm, So that was the stadium stuff. You guys keep getting your thoughts in on the stadium while we go along. But moving on to the Sir Jim, the Ineos, as frustrated or as Ineos out as you might be, you can't deny that when it comes to engaging with the fans and actually kind of putting his money where his mouth is in a lot of ways, Sir Jim has done 100 times more than the Glazers have ever. I mean, if he walked into Old Trafford and bought a bottle of water, he's already done 100 times more than the Glazers have. Um, he's also put in literally 300 million times more money than the Glazers have, but that's a whole nother story. But it was refreshing to see Sir Jim sit down. And you remember, this is not the first time he's done this. He's done this many, many times, which again, the Glazers just don't do. No one seems to remember that. That it's hard to remember something that didn't happen, right? But it was pretty candid and open, which is also nice to see. Like I said, Neville didn't hold back with a lot of his questions. He's asking about Ten Hag, ticket prices, redundancies, plan for the future, and whatnot. And again, like a lot of what was discussed and a lot of what was shared was stuff we've already known, stuff we already discussed several times. But there were a couple little insightful nuggets here and there. Let me see what Danny's got to say. The question he should have asked is when and how is going to buy them out. Yeah, again, there are going to be limits to what Sir Jim can say openly. If you notice, he wasn't super openly critical. There weren't a whole lot of like absolutes thrown out there in, with some regards, because again, it's the nature of the way the club is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. You're not allowed to do something because it's not, you're an owner, but he's a minority shareholder, and then you've got not only the Glazers but also other minority shareholders as well, and you can't just say certain things. It's just the way it is. You're not allowed to. So that would be, information that we're not really privy to at the moment. Danny says, and why did he save them from bankruptcy instead of buying 100%? Well, if you can't afford to buy 100%, you can't afford to buy 100%. And buying 100% means you're fully taking on the debt and all that stuff. So there are reasons, and we're going to dive into that right now. Because from the off, Sir Jim was pretty clear that there has to be a change if he and the fans want to fix what's been going on at the club for the last, couple decades, specifically the last like 12 years or so. And he reminded us that change is uncomfortable and unpleasant, like we've discussed on this channel dozens of times. I think, again, one of the things I think that stood out for me most in this interview was how open, and I guess you could say how openly critical Sir Jim was when it came to the quality and the mentality of the players in the squad, or really the lack thereof, honestly. Early on in this interview, he remarked how they turned up for the final, right? He said they turn up for cup finals and do well, but then he specifically said against Crystal Palace, they just didn't turn up, which was interesting, like that he's going to call it out like that. And I don't have a problem with it necessarily. He also didn't shy away from the fact that both he and Ineos and then Ruben Amorim inherited a few players who just don't suit the system. And I think he even said like some of them are overpaid or they're just not good enough. Which again, nothing we haven't said a couple times. It's just interesting and a little bit refreshing, if I have to admit, to hear him say that. Perhaps maybe it's more a case of we just have never had this before from owners. And honestly, how many football club owners have ever sat down and discussed this kind of stuff? Can anybody name a single one? But I don't have a problem with it. It's refreshing. And it sort of shows the players, I hope, too, that their poor performances and that lack of mentality don't go unnoticed by the owner, let alone, us as fans. Let me see. Danny says, instead of bailing them out, he should have teamed up with Qatar instead of bidding against them. Well, remember what we've heard is that Qatar reportedly couldn't prove financial means on paper, which is why that a big thing. And I think there was a whole back and forth about that. But it's interesting. And Danny says, yeah, then get a partner that he should. Yeah, I mean, I've said it a couple times, like, if you couldn't afford it, why did you do it? But it sounds like it was a matter maybe of not wanting to pony up all the money now and trying to figure out how the club overall can work to make that money and pay off the debt, and pay off and start generating revenue, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. The club used to do that. And as we're going to go through, the club hasn't been doing that for several years. We've been losing money because of just the way things are. And so it's not enough to just come in and say, well, I'm just going to throw money at this, because then you still got all these other things, foundational, deep-seated things that if those don't change, you're only going to continue the cycle. So we'll see how it goes. Danny says lies and fake news. Leonard says, I'm 100% positive if you did team up with Qatar, people would still find ways to be against it. Well, I'm 100% positive that United fans specifically are going to find ways to be against anything. Because it's people, right? Especially on social media. If there's literally, we're like Garnacho in the final third. We have, this is what we want. We got our blinders on. Anything that doesn't fall in line with that is just, that's negative. It's PR, it's spin, it's we don't like it. And that's what people do. I get it. We're all frustrated. We're all angry. We all don't want to believe these things. And we're only seeing optics from what the media puts out and things like that. But there is a lot going on behind the scenes. Now, again, it sounds like I'm pro Ineos. I'm not. I'm just not anti Ineos. I'm willing to give people time to figure this stuff out because it's not simple. If we're going to give managers time, we're going to give players time to adjust to the league. Why wouldn't we give an owner time? I fully agreed with Sir Jim when he discussed a lot of the players that Amorim has available to him. He's missing a lot of people right now. There are some players on loan. There are some players who are injured. Some players he inherited. I get it. I didn't really agree with him when he used wages as a metric for that comparison. Mostly just because everybody at United is on big wages. I don't really think looking solely at the wages is the only metric you can use to defend something. Like, the club gave the players those wages, I get it, but at the same time, that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. Comparing someone who's on big wages at United, like Antony, to someone who's on big wages at like City or Liverpool, it's just not the same. But he did say he likes what he's seen from the players that he and Ineos have brought in the summer. He thinks that they're settling in nicely, guys like De Ligt, Mazraoui, Ugarte. And he said, they didn't have a whole lot of time. They had a very short amount of time when they came in, especially key members of the recruitment staff. And again, we've discussed this. Some of those guys were arriving late. Some of them, a lot of them, they weren't arriving at the club at the same time. Jason Wilcox, he said, was only at the club 3 weeks by the time summer transfer window rolled around. Barada was only there for a couple days by the time the summer transfer window. So it was a bit of a scramble. I'm still very frustrated that there wasn't more of a plan in place for the summer transfer window, but it is what it is. But this is also, he said, is what played a crucial role in keeping Ten Hag at the club after the FA Cup final, is that they didn't have a lot of time at that point to really fully explore all their options, which, I don't know, I guess I hear it, but at the same time, I'm like, that's not a good enough reason for me, if I'm being honest. But I mean, there's nothing we could do now. Like he said, he also added they wanted to see how Ten Hag performed under a new structure. At that point, they hadn't had enough time to decide, okay, was this the environment, the lack of a structure that was negatively hindering Ten Hag, or was Ten Hag just not good? And he called them like erratic, and he said they made the wrong decision. Because this an environment that has seen 5 other managers fail. And Sir Jim said in an early interview, like, the environment here at the last 10 years is not good enough for anybody to succeed. But he did admit, like I said, that it ended up being the wrong decision to keep Ten Hag. Then they corrected that decision. Same with Ashworth. He said the same thing about Dan Ashworth. He was asked about Amorim, and Sir Jim obviously fully backed Amorim. And he was asked about the way he's handled some players, and Sir Jim is fully behind Amorim when it came to the Rashford, Garnacho situations. And he said, Amorim is fully in charge of the dressing room. He's got a set of principles that he wants the players to abide by. And that principle is simply to be fully and utterly committed to winning. Winning this match, winning the next match. It's not complicated. Just put 100% of your mentality and your physicality into performance and winning on and off the pitch. If it looks like you're not fully in it off the pitch with some of the social media stuff, some of the off-pitch activities, and if you're distracted, Amorim's not going to play you. It's not always punishment. Sometimes it's just, if you're not fully in it, I can't rely on you, and that's just the way it is. If personal stuff happens, sometimes personal stuff happens, you can't play. Let me see what you guys are saying here. Danny said, he said too that basically Eric Ten Hag signing. Yeah, I remember he did make a little comment, which again, like I said earlier in the video, some of what he's said contradicts some of what we've been told, basically. So again, Ten Hag came out. I think Ten Hag came out and said he didn't really have a say in the De Ligt signing. It wasn't his target. But then Sir Jim came out yesterday and said, "Well, yeah, you can see Ten Hag did have a say. We've got a couple Dutch players." And I'm like, "Well, I don't." It's one of those he said she said kind of deals. Jules, big up, man. Haven't seen you in a minute. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you this morning, man. We are just having a little back and forth on this interview. We went through some stadium news to start. So, but big up, man. Good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. He reminded us a little bit of how amortization works, stating that they inherited not only these players, but he said, we're paying for players that we didn't even sign because of how the payments are split across a number of years. So he said the transfer fees, Ineos are cutting checks for Anthony, Højlund, Sancho. These guys, they're paying for them, even though they didn't sign them. Again, there's that 300 million of that debt that we're still owing is the fees that we haven't paid yet. They just literally, he said Ineos cut a check for 89 million on those fees alone, because of the way those are structured and because of the finances and stuff. I mean, again, that's more of why it's so difficult for us to move, because these fees that we're paying, the payments go against us on PSR, and it just hurts us. It's just been year after year of kicking the can down the road in terms of finances and debt and interest and all that stuff. And Sir Jim just happened to be the one who stepped onto the road when that can got kicked to him. So he was asked about Dan Ashworth as well, and what happened with all that business. And he said it was down to chemistry. And this was one of those instances I was like, I mean, I get it. You can't, part of it is like, maybe you can't say a whole lot. Maybe there's some sort of NDA, and maybe that goes both ways. And maybe part of it is just courtesy. Like, I don't want to say a lot. I'm not going to bash a guy who's not here anymore. It is what it is. But he said it was down to chemistry. So he said he's Neville asked between the rest of the team. He said just chemistry. But he did maintain, Sir Jim, that while hiring Dan Ashworth ended up being the wrong decision, again, admitting that he's made a mistake, which if you can't respect someone for admitting when they've made a mistake, which quite frankly, at least in my experience from what I've seen, that is for a lot of people is the hardest thing to do. If you can't give respect for someone for being able to do that, hold their hands up and admit when they got it wrong, then I don't know what to tell you. But he did defend, though, their willingness to correct it. So he says, we made the mistake, but I think we did a good job of fixing it when it became clear that it wasn't working out. And I've said before, when all that went down with Ten Hag, Dan Ashworth, I don't have a problem with swiftly correcting mistakes so they don't become bigger issues down the road. I have a problem, though, when there's an accumulation of these mistakes. Then I start to question your decision making in general, your judgment in general, your planning, your process in general. If I keep hiring and firing people, eventually people are going to stop looking at the people I'm firing and looking at my judgment when it comes to recruitment and whatnot. But I hear it. Leinart says, whoever decided to get De Ligt, fair play. De Ligt's been someone I wanted at this club for a while. I've liked De Ligt. When he started getting injuries, he kind of sort of fell off my radar, because for me, when you start picking up accumulation of injuries, I kind of just forget about you. But fair play to him, man. The dude took a flying knee. Jewel says, what are we all thinking about the interviews? And that's what we're discussing. We're kind of going through it right now. I'm going through it in the order in which it was happening. So if it seems jump all over the place with some of these things, it's because that's the way the interview went. I could have probably taken the time to organize it, but I didn't feel like it. Danny says 89 has to be paid, so we're not spending more than 150 in the summer, even if we sell Rashford. Yes, and again, the 89 million, it impacts our budget. It impacts what we can and can't do because of just the way PSR is and the shit show that Ineos inherited. It's like getting married to someone and you're like, cool, I've got this much money in the bank, and then finding out, oh, but they've got student loans that they haven't paid off, and so now that's coming out of my bank account that I've joined with them with. So I'm like, oh, I can't buy that new car because I've got to make these student loan payments this year. Like, that's like, it is what it is. Now, again, you knew all this going in, and that's where my empathy ends a little bit, is like, you knew all this going in. What was the plan, kind of a thing. So then he says Rashford and Sancho money will be the payment. Yeah, hopefully Malacia money could be the payment. Hopefully Anthony, some money for that will be the payment. Now, the interesting thing for me with PSR, and something that I meant to look into more in depth a while ago is, so we know it's a 3-year thing with PSR. So what happens, like 3 years, this is what you can report for losses, right? 3 years, 105 million in losses. That's what you can report. So what happens if you signed a player for like, let's say you sign a player for like 100 million like 4 years ago? What happens in that when that 3 years is done? Does anything now count towards a new PSR window? So if you can stretch it out for 3 years, does it help you out? I need to look into that a little further. If anyone does know, let me know. But Danny says, I respect him for that. Well, Danny, look at you, man. Look at you guys. Like, big up, man. I know it's not easy to give props when we're all up in our feelings and we all have a lot of negativity towards Sir Jim, but big up yourself for being able to at least give him a little bit of kudos for that, man. Rob says, didn't Ashworth have issues at Newcastle with the manager? Also some email leaks. Yeah, there were some email leaks when we were linked to him and stuff. There was a lot of that stuff going on. I mean, it's never going to be a smooth process, it seems. So scroll up on the comments. Yeah, Danny's comments are basically lies and fake news. So you can go ahead. Danny said, I wanted Delit instead of Slab under Ollie. I didn't have a problem with Maguire, but I think we signed him just a couple years too late. I wanted Maguire when he was at Hull, and we should have got him when Hull got relegated, the same way Liverpool got Andy Robertson when Hull got relegated. That's when we should have got Maguire. I think Maguire could have been totally different for us under Mourinho, under a different structure, and without the weight of the armband, without the weight of the fee always looming on. We probably could have got Maguire for like 8-9 million when they got relegated, and we'd be singing a different story, not to mention the PSR story. So sometimes it's bad timing. And I remember, didn't we were looking at like Ruben Diaz or something, and we ended up getting Maguire too. I don't know. It's interesting, man. Jules says, the new stadium looks like Butlins. I don't know what Butlins is, but I'm sure it'll be fantastic. What is Butlins? I got to look it up now because I got to be in on the joke too. What is Butlins? Hold up. Oh, it's like a circus. Nice. It does. That's why I said it looks like a circus tent. Like, which I said it was fitting considering what we are right now. Rob says, happy with Delit, Mazior, and Ugarte. Not certain on Xerxes. Yes, jury's still out on Xerxes. Again, he's not a striker. He's definitely more of a McTominay for me. He's going to play in that 10. He's going to be the one in charge of maybe progressing the ball. I don't know how he pops up with the ball while he's closed down by 3 defenders. Somehow it just stays glued to his feet. He just spins and nutmegs, and then he's got the ball and he's got acres of space. I don't know how he does it. I can't. It literally flies against every law of physics imaginable, but he does it. So Danny says, I'm hoping Xerxes will take a season to adjust and he will take off next season, Rob. Let's hope so. I ended up selling him in my career mode this morning, actually. So I think he went to Lille. But what are you going to do? Rob says, post-war holiday camps in the UK. Interesting. Lionheart says, Slab is Maguire. I was wondering who the heck that was. Not kind. It's Slab head, man. He's got a huge head. So, getting back here. So, in terms of the decision to sack Dan Ashworth. So again, Sir Jim says, like, they knew it wasn't going to look good. They knew they were going to get a lot of flack for it. They knew it was going to be nothing but negativity, but they thought it was better for them to make that decision and deal with the negative PR, deal with the pushback, than to stick with something that wasn't working. And I have nothing but respect if you can do that. If you're willing to take the brunt of that negativity for the pragmatic good of the club, then you have to do it. And he said that a couple times. This is how they're going to be doing things. They're going to have to make unpopular decisions, but they're going to be made for the good of the club. Despite what people think, they're not ending free lunches so they can pocket money. They're doing this to get us out of this debt, to get us out of the shit show, to keep us from going under. They're not like the Glazers where they're like, let's take away this free lunch and all that money, all that million we're saving, let's put that in our pockets. That's not what Ineos are doing. I don't know. I'm not saying you guys are thinking this. I've seen this so much on social media. I'm like, I don't know where this thought came from that this is what they're doing. Like, everyone's calling them greedy. Like, greed means you're taking something for yourself. This is not what's happening right now. They're trying to get a handle on the finances, and this is the kind of stuff that's going to have to happen for a little bit. Now, I've said many times, I don't like a lot of it. I don't agree with a lot of it. I understand the why behind it. And I've also challenged Ineos to come up with other solutions, creative problem solving alternatives to just firing people and cutting things. I get it. I've also said I don't understand why everyone's in an uproar about free lunches, because I've never had one. A lot of people don't have one. So it is what it is. But and again, on that, Neville brought up the whole free meals kind of stuff. I just lost my spot here. Hold up. Oh, hold on. Let's make sure I found my spot here. I just completely lost my spot here. Hold on, guys. Keep your comments coming in. Let me There we go. Sorry. Let me get caught up with the chat while I'm looking. Jewel says, I like the idea of the canopy sheltering us from the Manchester rain. Well, it was funny because the architect, Norman Foster, said that canvas over the top will actually utilize solar energy, but it would also utilize rainwater as well. So all that leaky rain we've been complaining about and getting drenched on will actually be utilized for other things. Now, I don't know what, maybe power or utilized for the irrigation or what, but he said the roof actually does that. So it's interesting. Danny says, I agree on the cutbacks. They have no choice, but we mentioned on here at time, why can't the players fund the charity cutbacks? And Neville said the same. Yep, we're getting there, man. We're covering all of it. Yeah, he did. Like I said, but again, that's one of the things that rubbed me the wrong way, because what shocked me is when Neville said that, Sir Jim was like, oh, I didn't think about that. And that's what I mean when I say that's your job here. You got to come up with solutions that don't just involve just firing people or cutting back on stuff. Like, that to me is not problem solving. So I get there's another side to that coin, and you're right, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is propaganda BS again. Oh, Danny, never change. But again, this is where Neville brought up the free meals. He said, but again, Sir Jim said the same thing. Like, who gets free meals? I get that. Neville pushed back on him a little bit, though, pointing out that, again, like Danny's saying, the club could have held maybe like a charity event with players like Maguire, Bruno turning up, speaking. The players could have contributed. I mean, you can't force a player to contribute. Now, if the players want to contribute out of their own pocket, that's a different story. But you can't tell people what to do with their money. That's not cool. But I do agree. Like, there are other solutions out there. Like I've said, release a fourth kit. Like, put more stuff in the mega store. Lease some space for other stores and restaurants or something if you want to start making more money. There are other ways to do stuff to raise money. And Sir Jim's response, again, like I said, didn't sit right with me. Like no one suggested, and he said no one suggested things like that. He said that if someone would have suggested something like that, he would have supported it. But that's where I'm like, dude, like you just like sit there and wait for other people to give you ideas. Like, he's sitting there in a room like, all right, hit me with it, guys. Nope, that one's bad. Nope, and that's it. Like, you're not thinking yourself. You have no impetus to come up with solutions. Like, you have no ideas of your own. I mean, is that how you got to be a billionaire? By just not having ideas, not being proactive, not having any sort of dynamic, creative problem solving? It doesn't make sense. If it's true, that's worrying. And I think even Gary Neville said, like, that's alarming to hear him say that, because, again, that was one of my criteria when we talked about assessing, Ineos after the January window. You have to come up with better solutions for these issues. You're the one who took on these issues. You have to come up with better solutions. But it doesn't fill me with a whole lot of confidence, if that makes sense. Linar says, Ineos are trying to save the club. Fuck the free lunches. If one is pissed off about their free lunch getting taken away, who is beating greedy then? I mean, like I said, you're always going to look like the bad guy when you've got to take away something that should have never been given. If you've got kids and you let them hang out with grandma and grandpa, and grandma and grandpa want to give them ice cream before dinner, and you show up and you're like, no, you can't have ice cream before dinner, who's going to look like the bad guy then? The one who's got to take the ice cream away, the one who never should have given the ice cream in the first place? Like, it's a microcosm of the shit that Ineos have to deal with. Like, our bloated workforce, all the free perks. I get it. It's nice to have perks. It's awesome. We should be taking care of our staff and everything. But at the same time, it was a bit careless, a bit like lavish, and a bit reckless in terms of just that kind of bloated kind of spending. This was reminiscent of like a rich kid blowing a weekend trip with their friends on their parents' credit card and just not caring about any of it. Like, that's what the Glazers have been doing. The Glazers they didn't even buy the shares. Their father bought the shares that allowed him to become majority stakeholder. The Glazers, the children, the six of them, literally did nothing at all, and that's what it is. Jules says, "Is it up to Jim to come up with every solution? It's probably low down on his priority list, and it's probably not up to him to come to a solution for everything. As the owner, no, you're going to delegate. You're going to have people in place that you trust. But at the same time, if he's sitting there saying there are situations where nobody brought these to him, he was aware of the decisions. He was aware of a lot of this. Did he not at any point in time think, okay, this is the problem. We're actively trying to work on it. Do I have any thoughts of my own rattling around in my head? Like, you could take literally 10 minutes to sit with a pad of paper and just make a pros and cons list, for fuck's sake. Like, it's not like I'm asking him to sit down and take a sabbatical and work on all this. Like, just, do you not have any sort of thoughts? Like, oh, what about this? What if we do this? Like, how is that not a thing? Like, and maybe that's just not the way billionaires operate. I don't know, but I'm like, if you don't have an active, like, proactive approach to this, you don't have any thoughts of your own. Like, that to me just, I don't know. I would like him to contribute more if that's the way things are going on. Danny says 100% worrying sounds like his way or the highway. I don't have a problem with an owner wanting things his way. I really don't, personally. But again, sometimes you have to be willing to hear things, and you have to be willing to have those kind of discussions. I don't have a problem with an owner at the end of the day having the final say on things, because at the end of the day, it's you who's going to take responsibility for that. And so I get it. I get it when you're the one who's the face of that publicly. You're going to want to make sure you're doing what you think is best. So I hear it. Leonard says, that's why Granny and Granddad never look after our kids. I mean, I don't have kids, but I do remember getting spoiled a bit when I was a kid going over to my grandparents' house. So what are you going to do? I always got cake. There's a reason German chocolate cake is my favorite, because my grandma always made homemade German chocolate cake. And when I say homemade, I mean the frosting even was homemade. So if anyone wants to get me a present, it's German chocolate cake. I don't like gifts. I've never liked, even on my birthdays, Christmas, I don't like presents. But if anyone wants to bake me a cake or cookies or brownies or something, I got nothing but time for that. We can deal with the diabetes down the road, but I'll take the cake now. Jules says, the Glazers left the credit card unattended for 20 years. Yep. They left a lot of things unattended for 20 years, which is something Sir Jim touched upon as well, that we're going to touch upon here shortly. But the Glazers left a lot of things undone. But yeah, this is when Neville kind of started to touch upon the financial situation as well, aside from the tickets and whatnot. He said, Sir Jim stated that the club has lost £1/3 billion in just 4 years. That is catastrophic. Losing £1/3 billion over a 4-year period is not okay. He said the cost of running the club. Now, I've seen the Athletic push back about this, but I'm not saying I fully believe. I'm just saying I'm focusing on what Sir Jim said, because we're talking about the interview. But he said the cost of running the club, salaries, operating costs, player wages, that's all increased. So the costs to run it have increased, while poor performances and poor decision making have seen revenue decrease. Again, we lost a big training ground sponsor when the fans protested the Super League. We've been losing money left and right with players and whatnot because of all that. And then obviously poor performances in Europe. We didn't even make it out of the group stage of the Champions League last year, have seen us lose a lot of potential money as well. Obviously, COVID killed a lot of that too. Now, PSR rules were relaxed for COVID, but you're still losing money, right? Just because you're relaxed in PSR doesn't mean you haven't still lost that money. Match day revenue, tickets, merch, concessions, all that stuff, that's where the money comes from. And that's when you're losing that for over a year because of lockdown, that's you're going to take a hit. But let me repeat, like, while we were losing money every single year, we also overspent on wages, and operating costs increased significantly. We increased that workforce over the last decade to 1,100, while costs for everything else. So we were adding that to the cost as well. You have to pay those people salaries and benefits and whatnot, and free meals. But the disproportion of incoming revenue to outgoing costs, that's just not sustainable, no matter how you slice it. Whether you're a football club like United, or whether you're a lemonade stand, if you're selling lemonade for $0.25 and it's costing you $10 a glass to make, like, you're not doing anything. You're not making money. Like, this is why I'm annoyed. In my city, I can't even have a garage sale without having to go get a permit for it, which is just dumb. But that's a whole other thing. But this was allowed to go on for so long. Like Sir Jim said, over the last 4 years, 300 million lost. But Sir Jim said, like, this, because this has been allowed to go on for so long. He said without his investment, the club would have been out of money by Christmas. It would have been no money at all, and we knew that. We knew that the other day. We talked about that the other day. There was like 15 million in cash. I think that was Kieran McGuire who talked about this a couple weeks ago. 15 million in cash in reserves before Sir Jim put in a few hundred million. And people just are very quick to overlook that little tidbit of information. Oh, let me take a break here. Teresa, maybe the advisors are not United friendly. Sir Jim looked a bit rattled. I mean, it's got to be hard. I'm sure he's frustrated. He said he's like, it's not fun for him to read the news and to read what people are writing and to kind of take on the full fury of the fans. I get it. And he did look rattled. I'm sure he's thinking a lot of what we're thinking. I'm sure he's very frustrated. He's just not, he legally can't say a lot of what I'm sure he wants to say and what he's thinking because of the way that the ownership works there at the club. And we broke down that ownership model a couple of weeks ago. The link is in the description if you guys want to go check that out when you're done here. Leonard says, not even joking, both kids are lactose intolerant and they're feeding them ice cream. Oh, just can you not, do they not know like they're lactose? Do they not just maybe bring some lactose free ice cream? I can't have cream, but I can have milk. Like, milk doesn't bug my stomach, but anything with heavy cream in it, ranch dressing, cream cheese, ice cream, that always kills my stomach. Ice cream is worth it though. I'll put up with a little discomfort for some good ice cream. Teresa says, with regards to free lunches, could it be that the free fell away, the cafeteria stays open, but there is a fee involved? One doesn't really know the truth anymore. It's hard to know the truth, especially when everybody's just listening to the media and believing everything. I mean, like I've said, I broke down in that video a couple weeks ago, like Google, Meta, they're doing away with all the free stuff too. And Meta's even being pretty sneaky about it. Like I said, they do the free dinners, but they made the cafeteria open. That's the free dinner starts a half hour after the final free shuttle. So you have to basically choose, do I want a free ride home or do I want free dinner? Like, they don't let you do both, basically. Google got away with takeaway boxes, so you can't bring food home. My mom works at one of the biggest automotive companies in the country. She still has to pay for lunch or she has to bring it from home. It's just the way it works. Like I said, I don't know anyone who gets a free lunch. That's a perk that probably should have never been allowed to happen, but I hear you. Hakuna Matata, welcome. No worries. Good to see you, my friend. Please keep Old Trafford. I wish it were that simple, man. Unfortunately, 20 years of neglect and slapping on a fresh coat of paint just means it's not feasible. I wish it were. I love Old Trafford. Like I said, the stadium will be done in about hopefully 5 years. If you haven't gotten to Old Trafford, you have 5 years to go do it. So we'll see. Jules says season ticket prices were frozen for 10 years while costs were going up. Again, it's hard, right? And I hear both sides to that. So obviously I'm not a season ticket holder. If I lived there, I would be, like, just I would be going to every single match. But I hear it. Like, it's hard to find that line between being financially sustainable and responsible, but also staying loyal to the fans. Now, this is where performances on the pitch and over a course of a larger sample size of seasons should get more sponsors, should bring in more revenue. You want to compete far into tournaments like the Champions League. You want to get more revenue. That should help. You should be able to sell players like we did with Ronaldo all those years ago, but we just weren't doing any of that, yet costs were going up. And so I hear you don't want to, the fans shouldn't be made to pay for that. I get that. But again, the players also have to perform too. It's hard. It's like, I think that's probably the most frustrating thing about all this, Jules, is like, human beings, we need a face. We need something to point the finger to say this is, we need a reason. We need to have something to blame. And when we don't have that, when there is this ambiguity, when there is all this unknown, there's not a clear blame, like scapegoat, we don't know what to do. And this is the thing with anger. Anger is like a grenade when it comes to stuff like that. When there's not something to point the anger to, it's just everybody gets caught in the blast. Everybody does. And it's frustrating. I get it. I'm frustrated. I try really, really hard to be objective, to give the benefit of a doubt in a lot of cases. You guys have seen me. I've criticized some decisions. I've said I'm not happy. I understand, sir. I'm trying to look at it from every side. Part of that is my job here as the host. Like, I can't sit here and just rage out, and nobody wants to see me throw a temper tantrum. It just is what it is. But I hear it. I hear it, man. Jules says it all smells of indecision amongst the Glazer ownership. It all smells of neglect. They're not good owners. They're barely halfway decent business people. Like, they're just not good. They didn't look at any of the fact that it was a football club, and they only looked at it as a cash cow. Go check out the book. Chris Blackhurst wrote it, The World's Biggest Cash Machine. Go check it out. It is very good. Breaks it all down. Hakuna Matata says ticket prices going up, but team performance going down. Well, that's one of the next topics to discuss, so keep that on the back burner. But fair play to Gary Neville for making sure to constantly kind of add in those little remarks as we're talking about this, Jules, about how the club's been mismanaged for a decade, for almost 2 decades, really. But, I've said it before, the media don't mention it, and a lot of fans are only looking at Ineos right now because the media doesn't mention the Glazers anymore. They never really did, to be honest. And Ineos are the one who are making all the decisions right now. So the fans are only seeing that. And unfortunately, Ineos came in right at the peak of fan content, social media. The Glazers came in, none of that was a thing. So I'm sure if it was, we would have seen something totally different. But Sir Jim doesn't want to have to do all this. But like he told Neville, Ineos can't just put their heads in the sand and just ignore the problems. Like, that's what the Glazers have done for the better part of 2 decades. They've just avoided it. They barely left Tampa. They only show up on cup finals to get a photo op with a trophy. I'm sure they couldn't pick the FA Cup out of a freaking collection of glasses at IKEA, let alone know what it is in real life. Like, I'm sure they couldn't go to Dick's Sporting Goods and pick out a football with a roadmap and 12 hours of time on their hands. Like, and this is what we have to deal with. And to be fair to his credit, Sir Jim didn't 100% avoid implying that the Glazers have played a role in the mismanagement. Again, mostly by neglect, mostly by not being involved. So let me put this up on the screen here. I'll show you what he said here. So he kind of implied, again, a little too careless. He said the Glazers, are 3,000 miles away, and they gave management at Manchester United a lot of rope. If you look at some of the other characters in English football that are owners, they are heavily involved in the details of the running of the club. The Glazers, gave management too much rope. The previous 2 teams of management have to take a lot of the blame. It's not just the Glazer family. So he's implying, again, the Glazers maybe were a little too hands-off, maybe just trusted the wrong people. Now, we know Woodward was not fit for purpose. He was just a guy that they knew, who helped them basically acquire the club, right, the shares and whatnot. He had a whole role in that. Didn't know a thing about football. Richard Murtaugh, Arnold, same thing. And this is the hands that were given the steering wheel of this club for better part of 2 decades. It's just, and this is what is, again, it's the hands-off approach, the neglect, the just avoidant behavior of the ownership is just played a big role. And I agree, it's not only on the Glazers. Now, again, Sir Jim's not going to come out and say that. I mean, I didn't like how he kind of deflected away from it by simply saying that throwing money at the problems isn't necessarily the answer. But I agree with him that it doesn't. But again, it didn't really address it. But again, part of that is there's a limit to what he says. It did feel like he just didn't want to get into it, which is fine. But again, the club's a publicly traded entity. The Glazers are still majority shareholders. There's limits to what Sir Jim and anybody can say. I can still not like his response. So I can still be critical of it and say, like, we know what you're saying, man. Jules says Ed Woodward must have been a world-class bullshitter. A couple of Woodward slant here. Woodward just pissed money down the drain. Arnold Murtaugh learned from him. Yeah. Unfortunately, they still weren't really great. Hakuna Matata, I appreciate the love. He says, hit that like and subscribe button. Yes, please do, you guys. Helps the channel grow, helps the community grow, gets more people involved. I like having a lot of people getting involved, as you can see. But yeah, like Danny and Jules, like we've talked about this a couple times. If you read this book, The Club, this book I think was written in 2018, And so obviously 3 years before the Super League was announced, the book written in 2018, the chapter on the Super League was discussing meetings, secret meetings that were held back in like 2015, 2016 in hotels, secret conferences and stuff, planning the Super League. And the person representing United at those meetings was Ed Woodward. So 5, 6 years before the Super League was announced, 3 years before this book was written, those meetings were going on. So again, sneaky. But again, I think why Sir Jim can't say certain things. I get it. We all know a lot of this anyway. But I think that because I think what bugged me most about it, I don't like selective transparency in an interview like this. And it kind of felt like maybe he was minimizing some of it a little bit with his response. But again, it might be me over reading too much into it, and it could have more to do with the fact that he's got to be very careful with what he says. But again, I can't imagine he's too happy about what he inherited and why, and we all know the why. And we're all frustrated, right? We want new signings, we want better players, but that's not going to happen until finances are turned around and we can move on guys like Sancho, Antony, Rashford, who are probably overpaid. Again, Sir Jim also spoke with BBC Sport, and he said, there are some players that are overpaid, who aren't good enough. He also told them, when it comes to turning around the finances, and this is a quote, he said, I have no plans to sell. He's got no plans to sell homegrown players in order to make profit. This is what he said on that, because this is something that the media has been pushing as well. And now we have something to hold him accountable to. He says, Menu or Garnacho for sale to make a profit. No. We won't be selling players because of the state we're in financially. So again, we're not selling players. Now, the media has been pushing this now for over a month. That in order to make money, and again, we bought into it. We all did, because this is the only information we had. So we speculated and we talked. We took contracts. I mean, this is why you won't see me 100% buy into this whole Chris Wheeler nonsense about copy Menu's wages, because this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Let me get this off the screen here. As Sir Jim says, they're still paying for Glazer signings to the tune of $89 million last summer. That's going to cut into the budget for strengthening the squad. Now, finances they've also been trying to get a handle on this with the redundancies. So again, according to recent accounts, United are expected to save 40 million to between 40 and 45 million from those first round of redundancies, those 250 people. So similar numbers seems possible for the next round. So around 90 million potentially between the redundancies from a staff that had doubled in size over a decade since Sir Alex left. Coincidence? I think not. But he says that they've reduced the cost of running the club by about 125 million. So that is going to completely transform our financial state, what we can do in other areas financially. So they're not pocketing the money. They're cutting down on excess costs that shouldn't have been there. But a lot of those costs, like Sir Jim shared one that I was like, wait, what? He said he discovered that the club had a body language consultant on the books that was earning £175,000 a year. So the club at some point hired a body language consultant for the tune of $175K a year. That is the kind of spending that we're talking about. Does anybody feel badly that this person was hired and fired? Like, no one wants to lose their job. But I can guarantee you that if you're a body language consultant that charges $175K a year, you'll be fine. You'll find another job. You're already pretty well established as a body language consultant if you can charge that much as a salary. Let's be honest. Like, this is like, I feel bad, and like no one wants to lose their job. This is why I don't feel too bad when managers get sacked, because they're getting a golden handshake on the way out the door, and they're set up for a while. Like, I don't feel badly about that. Then he says, all negative news in the media to divide United even more. I mean, we've seen that for years, and this is the thing that I don't get. I'm trying really hard not to be hypercritical of United fans, because I am a United fan. You guys are United fans, but like, we can't in one breath say the media is negative, they have an agenda, and then turn around and automatically just buy whatever they say because it's what we want to believe. Like, we can't have it both ways. we can't pick and choose what we think is agenda and what we think is this and that based on how we feel about a certain person or how we feel in a given moment or how we feel after a result. Like, this is why this is objectivity. You have to kind of keep it fair. You're allowed to change your opinion if new information comes to light. Like, that's fine. That's life. That's how life works. But again, it's not just like, I believe this because I'm mad at Sir Jim, but I don't believe this because this. Like, it's not how the media is. The media. We know that they're going to do this. So Rob says, I could have told them for free that Rashford's body language is poor. Yeah, didn't have to spend 175K to figure out that Rashford's body language is poor. Like, that's ridiculous. Lionheart says, wait, can you repeat that, please, Sean? Which part? I say a lot of things. I'll let me know what you want me to repeat while I take another swig of my ice cold pineapple juice. It's tasty. Let me know. So ticket prices were discussed as well, specifically the rise in ticket prices that we saw, so you guys can let me know what you thought about this, because I've seen some people kind of push back about this as well. But Sir Jim's explanation to the ticket price on all that came out was wildly different to what the media told fans that whipped them into a frenzy, if you guys remember. So remember, we talked about this 66-pound tickets up from 33, and how we talked about it was only like a certain percentage of tickets. So basically what Sir Jim said is that there were, out of 75,000 tickets, 500 were returned after being purchased, because those fans didn't want their tickets anymore, right? They got their refund or whatever. So what he said, though, was those 500 tickets were also originally sold to those fans at discounted rates of £33. So the £33 was like the rate for children and for seniors, apparently. So what this meant, so when those people returned their tickets, they got what they paid for back, the £33, whatever. When the club went to resell those tickets, those 500, they sold them at the normal £66 rate. Apparently, that was the face value, as what Sir Jim said. Lionhearts, yeah. So, just to repeat real quick, sorry. The Sir Jim, when they've cut down costs by 125 million, part of that was the redundancies. They're probably going to save estimated 90 million. But one of the things Sir Jim pointed out is he discovered that the club had hired a body language consultant at some point in recent years, earning 175K a year, is what he discovered. It's that kind of stuff. Like, do we need a body language consultant? Probably not. Kai, welcome back to the channel, man. Good to see you. Hopefully you are doing well. Yeah, body language, just interesting stuff, right? Robert Reed, good to see you, man. Getting everybody in here. Anthony Martial's body language. I'm glass and hate cold British weather, but that 250K week is awesome. And Martial, to me, it was hard, because even when he scored, like, he would smile and stuff, but I'm like, maybe he's just a guy who just doesn't really emote a lot. I don't know. I really don't. But Danny says Housen said he was either telling lies or misinformed. Yeah, and that's like, I saw Housen's video this morning, and I'm like, and again, I don't know what's true or not. I don't know the intricacies of that. I doubt that Sir Jim is going to come on and just straight up lie about this. So if this is what he was told, that's one thing. But again, this is just what was said in the thing, so it's interesting. But again, according to Sir Jim, the club didn't increase ticket prices on those tickets. Again, it wasn't like all ticket prices are being increased. It was a small amount to begin with, and then Sir Jim clarified that no, the tickets were originally sold at a discounted price. When they were returned, we sold them at face value. And they said, and Sir Jim added, like, when we saw that it was negative, they reversed the decision. So it wasn't even like they actually ended up going through with it. They reversed the decision to begin with. So again, ticket prices weren't raised, according to Sir Jim. But, big but, and I cannot lie, he did say that there could be ticket price increases in the future for some tickets, but they will know that in a few weeks, if that's going to happen or not. So there's a chance that some ticket prices could increase in the future. Now, I don't know what those ticket prices are, but he didn't say all ticket prices. He didn't say they would. He said that that's something that they're discussing right now. It's like next on the list, and they're going to decide in a couple weeks if it's going to happen or not. So We will see. Jules says, I tried to buy a kid ticket and it was 66. So whichever it's spun, the cost has gone up significantly. See there. And again, it's good to hear that because I can only go by what just like you guys, I can only go by what I see. Now, when I buy tickets, I don't buy them from the club. Like it's like, again, it's one of these people who has a season ticket or something, can't go to a given match and sells it online at the website where I get them from. That's how I get it. So whether or not you want to think that's a problem, it just is what it is. And there, to me, it's like the person who's selling the ticket is making a bunch of money because I'm buying them for more because I can't, I don't want to join the membership. I can't plan a trip to Manchester around hopefully, waiting to a couple weeks before I go to find out if I've got a ticket for a match now in some lottery. I can't. That doesn't work for me logistically, time wise. I've got Justin usually that I'm trying to coordinate with. I can't wait that long. I try to plan this out a couple months in advance. Usually it's after the European schedule is released, so I can at least see when there's some back-to-back home matches that fall within like 3 days of each other. That's how I plan the trip. We got lucky this time that there was back-to-back home league matches. One was on Thursday, one was on Sunday, so that worked out nicely. But that is what it is. I don't have a problem paying a little extra. It's not going to the club. It's going to the person who has the ticket. So it is what it is. I'd rather get to pick my seat, pick my game, and that's it. Says Christ on a bike. Cheers, Sean. Yeah, it's been. So like Jules said, there's been no reversal. So either Sir Jim, like Danny was saying, he's either lying or someone has lied to him because this is what he literally said to Gary Neville yesterday. So now, but see, this is the thing. When you say stuff like this in an interview now, you are held accountable to what you say. And now we have this to hold a standard to. So if he's lying, if it hasn't actually happened, or if he's just been misinformed, he's just repeating what he's been told, something somewhere along the lines is something's getting lost in translation. So that's interesting, though. That's too bad, though. So, I mean, I might be biased since I live in the U.S., but I also, Sir Jim went on to talk about tickets, and I didn't like what he said about fans, specifically his comment about kind of staying true to the true fans rather than the ones who only go to big games and sell their tickets. Again, that's how I got my ticket. Again, biased probably because I'm the one who buys those tickets, but I think that maybe it just rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it's just an automatic kind of defensive thing, but like just because I don't live in Manchester and can only pop up for a couple matches a year, it doesn't mean I'm not a real fan. I think, I'm sure it was Sir Jim's comment was more about being very thankful and loyal to consistent fans who show up week in, week out. I don't think it was meant to be a dig, but I think maybe the way that was worded was not ideal in my opinion, but it is what it is. He reiterated the details regarding the stadium, talking about the project being part of the only way they can do the stadium really is if it's part of the whole regeneration project and not just a simple thing. No, he said that United doesn't need help to buy the stadium, and we knew that. BBC was trying. Remember, a couple months ago, BBC was trying to basically push this agenda. They were trying to get like more well-established content creators. I think like Terry Flewers. They were trying to get him basically to say that was the plan, that the taxpayers are going to pay for it. And to his credit, Terry Flewers said no, I'm not going to say that because it's just not true. So we know that the media, again, is trying to push this narrative. Sir Jim said, we don't need help to build a stadium, but in order to get the approval, it has to be part of the greater project in this regeneration thing, because otherwise they won't just let it do it off the back of nothing. So it's interesting stuff. Like I said, some of it some of it was wildly different than what we said. And like Jules is pointing out, some of it, maybe not entirely accurate in terms of these ticket prices. So again, you guys are going to know more. Some of you probably know more about the ticket prices for children and whatnot than I do, but all I can do is go off what I'm reading in here because I don't know what the ins and outs of what those ticket prices are. I'd love to know what prompted this interview between Neville and Sir Jim. We know that Gary Neville is part of this regeneration project. So is it completely unbiased? It's up to you guys. Neville has never been shy about openly criticizing the Glazers, and he wasn't shy about that in this interview. They are still part owners of the club, and they will have a say in this project, and Neville's a part of it. So is it completely unbiased in that regard? I don't know. Um, but like we discussed a couple weeks ago, Sir Jim's got like 6 months to figure this out. They had this 18-month thing, 12 months in without a full purchase. The Glazers are allowed to start talking to other potential suitors and owners, and Sir Jim is supposed to be done paying for all this in 18 months. But we will see. Maybe the interviews try to buy him a little bit of sympathy or something. I don't know. Linar says, I think it was just sloppy language. Yeah, maybe he's not the best at. I mean, everybody's going to mess up the way they do. Not everything that comes across is going to be the way you want to hear it. Everything's going to be open for misunderstandings and whatnot. So I like to give things the benefit of a doubt in that regard. But I think at the end of the day, Sir Jim knows that fans are not happy about any of this. We've been unhappy with the ownership for decades, but he's come in and he was already catching strays from the get-go for not being able to buy the whole club and the Glazers still being here. But now he's catching the full force of this fan fury. That was a lot of Fs. He knows that, he understands it, but he's willing to endure it because he believes that, again, some of the decisions are not going to be fun, they're not going to be popular, but they're necessary, and I understand that. These decisions are being made not only to remedy the last 20 years, staunch the bleeding that we were doing financially, but to also build something for the future so that we can start turning things around, and ultimately so the fans can have something to be proud of. Ruben Amorim appears to be part of that future, according to Sir Jim, who stated that to Neville that he believes that Amorim will be here for a long time. He pledged to invest heavily in the rebuild this summer. So again, something else to hold him to and hold him accountable for because he said it. I think that he wants to be the full owner at some point. He might not have the money to do it right away, and it might take more time than maybe he thought it would. Might take more time than we would like, but I do think that he is a fan. He does want to be part of the club. I think that he's got to do a little better in some areas, being a little more proactive, coming up with better alternative solutions to some of these things, prioritizing things a little differently. Like the stadium, cool, it's going to be great, but there are other things I think in the here and now that we need to make sure we're addressing as well, not just a stadium 5 years down the road. I mean, he's going to be almost 80 by the time that stadium is finished, so I think he would like to try to get things done in a quicker time frame. Like I said earlier, I mean, I'm not pro Ineos. I'm also just not anti Ineos. I'm treating this thing the same way like I treat a new player or a new manager. Like I said at the beginning of the video, just give them time. Criticize the decisions, yes. Demand better from them at times, of course, but give them time. Everybody deserves a little time. We can't use the last 10 years post Sir Alex. We can't use the last 2 decades of Glazer ownership to judge Ineos. I don't think that's quite fair. We wouldn't do that with a manager, so I don't think we have to do that to the owner necessarily, because the manager also doesn't have to deal with all this financial shit show. Owners do, and that's been the biggest issue right now. So we'll see what happens. The stadium news is interesting. Everybody's going to have thoughts, and I think the stadium news, the design of the stadium is going to be like the design of like a kit. Some people are all for it. Some people, it's completely subjective. I know people who cannot stand that the zebra kit from a couple of years back. I liked it. Some people don't. There are other kits I don't like the 16-17 home kit, the one that was like divided in the middle. Couldn't stand that. I thought it was so boring, so lazy. Adidas did not do a great job that season, but it is what it is. Danny said they need to step up and clear the shit and back Amorim properly. Well, part of backing him, Danny, is going to be clearing the shit. So, and Sir Jim has said that some players are overpaid. They're trying to get rid of some of them. Part of it is, I do agree we need to strengthen. I think we need to be smart with that. Like I've said many times before, we need to build, not buy. Look for some good signings. Do an actual little bit of scouting. Yes, bring in it might be a season or two of like a Brighton or a Dortmund thing where we're bringing in cheap, young, lesser known players that we can develop, but also maybe that we can flip in a couple of years' time. And that might be the way it is for a while. We're not at a place where one player is going to make a difference. It's just not the way you do things. We've got too much work to do. So we need to be smarter with our recruitment. We need to look at some deals, free agency, players entering the last year of the contract, maybe even look at loans. Like when we don't do loans very, very frequently. Sabitzer and Weghorst were the only loans we've done for a while, and those were like emergencies. Like we wouldn't have done anything had Van de Beek and Erickson not got injured, had Ronaldo not thrown his little temper tantrum, like we wouldn't have done anything. So it is what it is. Jules says, how are the Glazers viewed across the pond? I mean, by United fans, I mean, they're not viewed very well. I couldn't tell you how Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans feel because I don't follow the NFL. I can't watch too many commercials now. But I know that, as United fans, we're not happy. We're in the same boat as all of you guys. We're not happy about it. We want the same things you guys do over here. I'm sure the Buccaneers fans are happy because they got Super Bowls. They won a Super Bowl. They had like WrestleMania there a couple of years ago. Like, I'm sure they don't care because they're getting all the attention over here, like Bucks fans. And I remember there was that story that came out a while back, like when United went to the States, like the Glazers didn't want them to go visit Buccaneers Stadium, right? Because they didn't want them to see how nice it was compared to Old Trafford or compared to Carrington at the time. And that's another thing people are forgetting. Sir Jim, like, totally revamping Carrington as well. We need to have a state-of-the-art training facility. We need to have a state-of-the-art stadium. We need to have a state-of-the-art squad. Like, these are the three core principles of a club. And so I think that people are forgetting that as well. So don't forget that. What's Danny say? Danny says, I don't think the Buccaneers fans like them either, Jules. Yeah, I wouldn't know how Bucks fans feel, to be honest with you. Before that last Super Bowl they won a couple years back, I think the last one they won was like 2003 or something, which was a long, long time ago. But I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I just know United fans over here feel the same way as everyone else does. Then it says Glazers didn't pay anything or much at all for Buccaneers Stadium. Of course they didn't. Of course they didn't. That's the one thing the Glazers are known for. Even their father was finding ways to not spend their own money to make money, basically. And this is what most billionaires will do. You don't, like I said many times, I believe you have to be cheap to be rich. That's just the way you get there. And the Glazers are pros at it. So then it says fans sponsor, pay for it. Awesome. Well, that's their MO, right? In any case, get your thoughts in if you haven't yet. If you weren't able to catch the live, leave a comment. You guys know I'll check those comments out. It's Champions League today, kicks off. I think we're all going to be PSG fans today. Obviously, they're hoping to turn around a lucky for Liverpool 1-0 result in that first leg. Hopefully they can knock the Scousers out today. We're all PSG fans. It's Bayern Munich versus Bayer Leverkusen today as well. Inter versus Feyenoord. Barcelona versus Benfica. And if you are on Hayden Hackney watch, Middlesbrough kickoff later on today as well. I think they play QPR. So all sorts of stuff coming off tonight. Tomorrow, if you guys are on Arden Yashari watch, I think Club Brugge play Aston Villa again tomorrow in the Champions League. So go check out Arden Yashari for Club Brugge. He'd be one of my top picks for one of those midfield roles. He probably would cost a bit more than he would have earlier because I think Club Brugge already extended his contract, even though they just signed him in the summer. But he's an excellent player. But until then, thank you guys for stopping by. I know it was a little longer video today. We had a lot to go over. The stadium news kind of made it a little longer, but I was happy to get you guys' thoughts in. If you weren't able to catch that, you can watch the beginning, like 10 minutes of the video. You can check out some of those images and stuff. And you can go check out the United site too. All the images are on there as well. But until then, until I see you guys, we're going to do the preview tomorrow for the Europa League match. So make sure you come by and check that out. That'll probably be in the afternoon tomorrow. And then obviously we've got Europa on Thursday week. So we're trying to turn that 1-1 draw in the first leg around at home. Could be one of the biggest matches of the season. So we're going to jump all over that. So like the video, please, if you haven't yet. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are on the road to 3K. Thank you guys for stopping by. Everybody getting involved in the chat. Cheers. I know we're all not going to agree all the time on everything, and that's fine. The point is not to sit here and exist in an echo chamber. We're allowed to disagree and still hug it out at the end of the day. So thank you guys for stopping by. You guys know that I'm so proud and so thankful of your input and the way you've been involved in the community. I'd love to see it keep growing. So like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go PSG. Later.